Rhetorical devices are one aspect of rhetorical analysis. When you're analyzing a piece of rhetoric, you can use different options, different techniques, and these devices are linguistic techniques that encourage persuasion, that are used to persuade. So let's go through a few of them. There are many, many, many of them, but these are the ones that I think are the most important, maybe the most common, and let's get started. The first one is alliteration. This is also used in literature quite a bit, but it is the repetition of consonant sounds. So you would think of the sunshine soldier, and the sunshine soldier will shrink from the service of his country. All those S's, also called kind of sibilants. Here we have wild and woolly, threatening throngs. The next one is anakoluthon. You can hear the sound here.
Anakoluthon.
Right. Okay, so anakoluthon is sort of a sudden shift in the middle of a sentence meant to bring about kind of emphasis on that idea. You can see here from King Lear, I will have such revenges on you both that all the world shall... I will do such things, what they are, yet I know not. So it's kind of a break in your train of thought, and it provides emphasis. Anadiplosis is using the same word at the end of a sentence and the beginning of the next sentence. So you might see Yoda. Yoda is big on this. He says, fear leads to anger, anger leads to fear, fear leads to suffering. Analepsis is basically a flash forward. Sounds like this.
Analepsis.
And it's a flash forward, like I said. Basically, it's let's look at something from The Great Gatsby. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. So this is a flash forward because it is the narrator, Nick, and he is sort of giving you information from the future. Anaphora is the repetition of a word or expression at the beginning of successive clauses, phrases, sentences. And it sounds like this.
Anaphora.
All right. And we'll give you an example. We cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. Anastrophe is the transposition of usual word order, so it's kind of swapping of words. It sounds like this.
Anastrophe.
And Yoda is also big on anastrophe, but we'll give an example from Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The helmsman steered, the ship moved on, yet never a breeze up blew. Would normally be blew up. Antanaclasis is the repetition of the same word within a phrase or a sentence, and then the second occurrence has kind of a different, sometimes contrary meaning. So, we must all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately. That word hang is kind of used in different sense. Antiphrasis is the humorous and ironic use of words that is sort of like the opposite of the normal meaning. So you'd say the giant is 3 feet 4 inches tall. Antistrophe is the repetition of the same word at the end of successive clauses. It sounds like this.
Antistrophe.
Antistrophe. And one example is, in 1931, 10 years ago, Japan invaded Manichoku without warning. In 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia without warning. In 1938, Hitler occupied... See that without warning at the end? That would be the example. Antithesis is the opposition or contrast of words or ideas in a balanced or parallel construction. Okay, what does that mean? Not that I loved Caesar less, but that I loved Rome more. Antononesia is almost like some of the Anglo-Saxon word techniques, but here's our example here. It is defining a word or phrase, a defining word or phrase is substituted for a person's proper name. So you have the Bard of Avon for William Shakespeare. Amplification builds on a word or phrase. It evokes a sense of urgency or intensity in the reader's mind. We could say, they want a perfect house in a perfect neighborhood. It's that word perfect. Apophasis is raising of an issue by claiming not to mention it. This is very powerful in rhetoric. We won't discuss his previous crimes. It sounds like this.
Apophasis.
Apophasis. Aphoria sounds like this.
Aporia.
Aporian is an expression of a real or pretended doubt or uncertainty for rhetorical effect. Here is the example. Am I no better than a eunuch, or is the proper man the man with the right to existence, a raging stallion forever neighing after his neighbor's womankind? Apostrophe is not the punctuation mark. Apostrophe is a sudden turn from the general audience to address a person or entity that is not present. An example might be Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, addressing the West Wind. Or here we have, for Brutus, as you know, was Caesar's angel. Assonance is usually more used in poetic forms, but it is the repetition of vowel sounds. A very famous example is Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Kubla Khan. It goes in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alf the sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. So all of those vowels, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. Ascenditon is the lack of conjunctions between phrases and clauses in succession. So it sounds like this.
Ascenditon.
Ascenditon. And the example is from John F. Kennedy, and he says, we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and success of liberty. Brachology is a fun one. It is the sort of shortened expression of a larger concept, and we can see it here from Lolita, and it is, my very photogenic mother died in a freak accident, picnic, lightning. And it's that picnic lightning that is the rhetorical technique. So cacophony is the harsh joining of sounds. We have it from Winston Churchill. We want no parley with you and your grisly gang who work your wicked will. See all those really harsh kind of sounds that go together? Catachresis is, it's kind of a harsh metaphor. It sounds like this.
Catachresis.
It's normally used when you use a word in an alternate sense beyond its regular, normal senses. So I listen vainly but with thirsty ear from MacArthur's Farewell Address. That thirsty ear is is using a word in a different sense. Chiasmus is the opposite of parallelism. It's using two corresponding pairs not in parallel but in inverted order. Those gallant men will remain often in my thoughts, and in my prayers always. So you see it's reverted. It's kind of inverted that way, not A, B, but A, B, A. Climax is the arrangement of words, phrases, or clauses in an order that ascends. So often the very last element in that sequence is meant to have the most emphasis. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Dialogism is a disjunctive conclusion inferred from a single phrase. So like gravitation may act without contract. Therefore, either some force may act without contract, or gravitation is not a force. Dysphomism is the substitution of an offensive or disparaging term for one that is not offensive. So you might say the greasy spoon for the word dinner. Epistrophe is the repetition of a word or expression at the end of successive clauses, phrases, or sentences. And here's an example. Of the people, by the people, for the people. A euphemism is the substitution of a non-offensive term for a more offensive one. So it'd be like you could say to pass away is to die, to meet your maker is to die, to have a bun in the oven is to be pregnant. High pillage is an interesting one. It is an adjective that grammatically qualifies a noun other than the actual thing it's describing. So here we have, the eye of man hath not heard, the ear of man hath not seen, man's hand is not able to taste, his tongue to conceive, nor his heart to report what my dream was. Hyperbaton is the transposition or inversion of idiomatic word order. We have Yoda for this too. Judge me by my size, do you? Hyperbole is exaggeration to an extreme degree, and for this we have Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. I have been assured by a very knowing American of my acquaintance in London that a young healthy child, well nursed, is, at a year old, a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food. Of course, he's making a satire about eating the children of Ireland to resolve the poverty and the many orphans, which is total satire. It's the opposite of what he means. Hypophora is to raise a question and then answer it yourself. For that we have Winston Churchill. You asked, what is our policy? I will, it is to wage war by sea, land, and air, with all our might and with all our strength. Hysteron prophenon sounds like this.
Hysteron proteron.
Hysteron protenon is inversion. It's an inversion technique. So you put what would come last first. You might think of born and bred. Instead of saying born and bred, you would say bred and born. Irony, verbal irony. There are several types of irony, but verbal irony is to say the opposite of what you mean. It's often known as sarcasm or being facetious, but this is the technical term, verbal irony. It's saying the opposite of what you mean. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. Brutus is not an honorable man. Litotes is understatement. It's intensification by denying the contrary of the thing being affirmed. It's basically just understatement. So look, war is not healthy for children and other living things. Of course it's not. And litotes sounds like this.
Litotes or litotes.
Meiosis is basically understatement. It's presenting a thing with great underemphasis. One nuclear bomb can ruin your whole day. Metaphor is a very common technique. It's comparing two things without using like or as. So we have life's but a walking shadow, a poor player who struts and frets his hour upon the stage. Life is a walking shadow. Not life's like a walking shadow. Life is a walking shadow. Metonymy sounds like this.
Metonymy.
Metonymy. And it is the substitution of one word for another which it suggests. So the pen is mightier than the sword. Automatopoeia is the use of words that imitate the actual sound that the words make. So smack, boom, bang, pop. An oxymoron is a paradox used by the juxtaposition between two words. You could think of, I must be cruel only to be kind. Or you could think of jumbo shrimp. A paradox is something that is seemingly, two things that seemingly don't go together. Seemingly they can blow up the universe. They're not supposed to work together. They contradict each other. We should say, what a pity that youth must be wasted on the young. Parastroctian, let's hear it.
Paraprostokian.
Paratrostokian is the surprise ending of a phrase or series. he was at his best when the going was good. Paranomia is a pun, basically. It's a pun. It's using two words that have similar sounds but are different in their sense. Let's look at this. How does it sound?
Paranomasia, also paronomasia.
All right. And you might think of the dying ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man. So that word grave works in two senses. A pleonasm is using more words than are necessary to express a thought. So it's like you might think of a free gift. Well, you don't need to mention the free portion. And it sounds like this.
Pleonasm.
Polysyndeton is a very common one. Sounds like this.
Polysyndeton, or
It is the repeated use of conjunctions in coordinate words and phrases. So like this portion here. And it was dark, and there was water standing in the street, and no lights, and windows broke, and boats all up in the town, and trees blown down, and everything all blown, and I got a skiff. See all those ands without any proper punctuation, right? A simile is like a metaphor, only you use the words like or as. So it's comparing two things by using like or as. My love is as a fever longing still. There's that as there. Synthesis is a technique in which words are scattered around to create a sense of bewilderment. An ass will with his long ears fray the flies that tickle him away, but man delights to have his ears blown by maggots in by flatters. Synecdoche is understanding one thing in relation to another. So we have, I should have been a pair of ragged claws. So it's like evoke the ragged claws idea to describe what you should have been. Synesis is the arrangement of words according to logic rather than grammatical form. We have from Huckleberry Finn, we have, what's the use of you learning to do right when it's troublesome to do right, and it ain't no trouble to do wrong, and the wages is just the same? Tautology is the repetition of a word or idea in different phrases of a sentence. Sounds like this.
Tautology.
Tautology. So you have with malice towards none and charity for all. Zeugma is two different words linked to a verb or an adjective which is strictly appropriate to only one of them. Nor Mars his sword, nor war's quick fire shall burn.